While the election may be still up in the air, we know one thing's for sure, and that's USC will be opening up Pac-12 play at 9 a.m. this weekend on Saturday. We'll have our votes for Saturday's contest counted and filed here on episode 8 of Sports Scene. Hello, everyone. I'm Carlo Jimenez, joined by Will Camardella and Courtney Wise. Guys, thanks very much for joining us here on Sports Scene. Let's start off with this matchup on Saturday. Talk to each of you guys. What do you think is going to go down on an early morning game at the Coliseum?
Well, better late than never is what I say. It's an early morning game, but we're starting the season in mid-November. So that's certainly exciting stuff that the Pac-12 did manage to get it together and start a season. But right away, this is one of the biggest games of the year for USC. Arizona State is a team that is at least in the mix for a Pac-12 South title. And USC basically needs to run the table if we can even look at this as a successful season in the 6-game interdivision schedule. And for me, the biggest key is, what does this USC defense turn into? We look at what they were last year. They were remarkably young, and they were remarkably average in pretty much any statistical category. Biggest thing to watch today is how they match up against an explosive Arizona State offense.
Yeah, I totally agree with you right there, Will. This is a Pac-12 opener we are looking for. So I think that hands down, USC is going to take it home. But the thing that is running through my head is Herm Edwards versus Clay Helton. I'm a big fan of Herm Edwards. And so I think that I also think that, USC's offense is going to be unstoppable. Their coaching has improved significantly. And I think that USC is the best Pac-12 school in the South Division. So USC will for sure take it home on Saturday.
All right, guys, let's talk about this for a little bit. You talk about two teams, and while they might be at the top of the conference in terms of the South, very different coaching staffs this year compared to last year, and a lot of turnover, especially on the offensive end for Arizona State. Now, that might seem like a disadvantage for Jaden Daniels in that offense, but again, that means USC has very limited film to try to scout this team. Does that aid Arizona State in preparing for this game, and the fact that the Trojans really just have to go out and play their ball and not really have a game plan? Or does it aid USC in knowing that that team has a year of their systems under their belt?
I think early in this season, experience is going to be king, and that's a benefit to USC's defense. They still only have 4 seniors on the roster, but pretty much the entire starting unit is intact. And I think it is reasonable to think, with an extended training camp, with more time to really break down the aspects of this matchup, that it is going to benefit them early. I think there's one proven playmaker right now, besides the quarterback on the Arizona State offensive roster. And I think if the USC defense can focus on what they know, shut him down. Of course, I'm talking about their wide receiver, Frank Darby. If they can put all everything they have into shutting him down, they're going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, and SC just made a change with their defensive coordinator by hiring Todd Orlando. And so I think Orlando can definitely improve USC's defensive system to make sure that, ASU doesn't take it home at the end of the day. So.
Well, with Orlando's system, Clay Helton has done nothing but praise it over the course of the offseason. He really likes his ability to get pressure on the quarterback in creative ways. And USC has the pieces. I've talked before about what a big season Drake Jackson's going to have on the edge. I think if they put a lot of pressure on Arizona State up front, that should also serve as an advantage, especially with what Orlando is able to scheme for them.
I'm going to have to disagree with you there a little bit, Will. This is a uber aggressive USC defensive team. Now, uber aggressive defensive teams sometimes get in trouble when you have athletic, mobile quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels. Last year, USC's home opener, they went ahead and they played Fresno State. Fresno State's leading rusher that game was Jose Reina, their quarterback, who rushed for 88 yards on 20 carries. For this USC team, you lose John Houston Jr. last year, a middle linebacker who did a lot of a ton of stuff trying to break up quarterback runs. How much of a problem will Daniels be using his feet this game? I think it's going to be a real struggle for USC.
Yeah, no, there's no question that Daniels is really strong with his feet. And I trust Todd Orlando, especially in the early going, to be able to scheme for that sort of thing. I think USC has guys on the defensive front who can get down to the sideline very quickly, chase down speedy players. And I think they'll match up well, especially if you take away a lot of the passing options early on and force Daniels to beat you with his legs.
Yeah, you got to make Daniels beat with his legs. But you mentioned earlier that Frank Darby was a guy that you thought was their only guy who come back who had some sort of offensive production. Darby last year averaged nearly 20 yards per reception. He beats you with the deep ball, something the Trojans struggled with a lot last year. How does USC on that backside of the defensive end? A lot of experience again, but no film on this ASU team. How do you stop guys from Darby by beating you with the deep ball?
Well, it's a good question. I believe Darby, the fact that Darby is the only proven commodity on ASU, put it this way, he's the only player on this roster who caught more than 8 balls last year. The only one. So if you have an extra 2 months to prepare for one proven playmaker, whatever it is, if you have an extra guy over top, you have the double vise on them all the time. If that's their only proven way to score points, I think that USC is going to be prepared for it with the extended offseason and the experience they have.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. USC has also won 4 of their last 5 matchups against ASU, which included like a narrow 31-26 victory last season. So they like also fell to Coach Edwards in his first year back in 2018. So I think that USC is gonna take it home. But yeah.
Yeah, Courtney, you talked about how it was close last year. And I think the Trojans, the only reason they got out of that game was, one, Michael Pittman Jr. had one of the best games of his USC career, led the team in receptions, led the team in total yards, and now he's gone this year. Who do you expect to pick up the slack for the Trojans on the offensive side? They jumped out to a 28-7 lead early in that game, but since then really didn't do anything. Who's got to step up on the Trojans' offensive side of the ball?
Well, the quarterback, Keaton Slovis, and Tyler Bonds, I think they're going to make it unstoppable for USC's offense. And so, yeah.
I think it's a mistake to think it's just going to be one guy picking up the slack. Why can't it be an improvement by committee for USC? Unlike ASU, they actually have enough firepower, proven firepower on their roster that will be able to collectively pick things up. Clay Helton does a great job, and the rest of the staff designing game plans for Slovis and the rest of the offense. I think they're all going to get into a rhythm early, and I think there are certainly enough weapons to make up for the loss of one player.
Yeah, and then I think one of those weapons, that is going to be huge for the USC team is having 4 healthy scholarship backs. I mean, late into last year, there were points where you had 1 healthy scholarship back. The Trojans, the great part about starting out this season in game number 1 is you have everybody healthy and available for the most part. When using those 4 backs, how much harder does it make it for the ASU defense? Because when you scout USC, you know about the air raid, but now you're talking about Marquise Stepp, Stephen Carr, Veve Malapei, even Keenan Christian, all guys who prevent 4 different types of running the football. Guys, how much harder is that going to make it for ASU?
Well, Clay Helton said guys like Carr have never looked better than they do in camp right now, right? I mean, listen, it's just another toy for Slovis to use. I mean, a little more balance can never hurt for the USC offense that can put pressure on them. So I think that's definitely, I mean, if the running backs produce more so than they did last season, it's going to be very hard to imagine a scenario where ASU shuts them down.
Yeah. Overall, I think the breaking point for USC and ASU, USC's offense will come through and score a lot of touchdowns. And so both teams are already looking strong, but I think USC's offense will come through overall. So
Yeah, and guys, let's transition a little bit. Let's talk about the heads of those offenses. Clay Helton in his press conference talked about one of the best parts about this game being game one is you get to see two of the premier quarterbacks in all of college football, is what he said here on November 7th. Guys, in terms of Jaden Daniels and Keaton Slovis, let's talk about who you think is going to perform better, and then who needs to perform better for their team to be successful.
So in my view, as far as who needs to perform better, it's going to be Daniels for Arizona State. I think this hot team is going to ride and die with him pretty much early in the season. What can he do to extend plays, create downfield throws, do a little with his legs? Because I just, there's nobody on the ASU offense, again, not named Frank Darby, that I can trust because I haven't seen it, right? None of us have. So I do believe that Daniels is more critical to ASU's success, but I also think Keaton Slovis is more equipped to play well in this game and in this season because I like his style better. He's a little more consistent. He seems a little bit more pro-ready, if that makes sense. So that's what I believe is going to be the case.
Yeah, I also agree with you, Will. I think Jaden Daniels will for sure. I for sure see one of the top quarterbacks for this game, especially since last year Daniels threw a 60% completion average, and he threw like over 2,000 yards with 17 touchdowns and like 1 interception. So I think Daniels' biggest strength by far is his ability to protect the football and to make smart decisions. So.
Yeah, guys, I'm going to have to disagree with you guys. I think on paper, this looks like Keaton Slovis' matchup to win. But in reality, I think a lot of things ASU does defensively and a lot of mistakes Keaton has offensively really plays in ASU's favor. Last time these two teams faced off, Slovis threw 2 picks. He's talked about it in these press conferences before the season. Interceptions is something he has to get down, and he's going against a defense that had 15 interceptions last season. I mean, that's nearly 2 per game. Absolutely ridiculous numbers. And for Jaden Daniels, we talked about it a little earlier, his ability to make plays with his legs. How does Keaton make sure in this air raid offense where while he's playing with most of his same receivers, he doesn't have that go-to in Michael Pittman Jr., make sure he keeps his interception numbers low?
Well, maybe it's a benefit to Keaton that he doesn't have a quote-unquote go-to receiver in this game, because it means that ASU has to sort of diffuse their focus a little bit more, right? We talked about the diversity of this offense, all the different weapons they have. It's not like Keaton Slovis can tunnel vision any one receiver, which I don't think is the case with Daniels at all. I think if you actually look at how these offenses are equipped, Daniels is the one to be more likely to fall into a trap of forcing a throw and an interception.
It's interesting you say that, Will. With Daniels in his last 157 passes, hasn't thrown an interception. So it will be interesting to see if USC can get to him. Courtney, in terms of your thoughts, how do you feel the quarterback matchup sways in either quarterback's advantage because of these different defenses?
Well, I think that in regards to defense, I think that Arizona State's defense is remarkable. They've nonstop. They're like one of the biggest strengths of the team for this next season, and so I think like the matchup will set the tone for whose defense is like the favorite in like the South Division. So that's what I think.
Yeah, it will be interesting. You talk about Todd Orlando's hard-hitting defense where he preaches run and hit, run full speed, hit a guy. And then this ASU team, which was one of the best passing defenses all of football, 72 passes defended in 2019. That's the 10th best in the nation. Guys, when we're talking about these two quarterbacks, again, Keaton with his second year with Graham Harrell, be getting more comfortable in that offense, building those relationships. Then you look at Jaden Daniels, who's got a whole new offense under his belt. For Daniels, with that whole new offense and all those new wide receivers, yet ASU has had a little more time to prepare. How much do you think that will make a difference considering things weren't as tightened up because of COVID-19 in Arizona?
Yeah, I think both quarterbacks are going to benefit a lot from more time to develop, because I think Keaton Slovis the number one thing is getting the turnovers down, as you mentioned, right? So I think the coaching staff does a very good job game planning for him and the receivers they have. So I think he'll be able to cut that down. As far as Daniels is concerned, when I watch him, I think he's an extraordinarily hit or miss quarterback. I mean, listen, he throws the best deep ball of almost any quarterback in the nation, but he has a tough time sustaining drives. He has a tough time methodically leading a team down the field. And I see Slovis able to do that consistently. I think that's also going to be a big key in this matchup.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we talked about, you mentioned it, Daniels not able to complete a lot of drives, being that freshman quarterback last year in that pretty much brand new offense, which is brand new once again for him. It'll be interesting to see how much ASU tries the deep ball against USC. You mentioned Daniels throws one of the better deep balls in all of college football. Is that going to be the key? Is it going to be those 20-yard receptions to Frank Darby down the field time after time? Because we saw USC try to do the same thing with Matt Fink against Utah, where offensively they looked horrible, but they got a couple 60, 40-yard completions able to pull out a win. Is USC's defensive strategy going to be, hey, let's play back, nothing behind us, make sure Daniels doesn't beat us with the ball down the field?
Well, I believe that, especially in a shortened season, I think a lot of teams are going to rely on what they know works from previous years. And I think that's going to be ASU's game plan, where it's like, we don't have to score on every drive, but if we can hit a couple of home run balls to Frank Darby or anybody else down the field with what Daniels is able to do. I mean, that's how they beat Oregon last year with one of the biggest upsets of the year. I mean, they weren't scoring every drive, but they definitely were able to hit home run balls. And I think that's what they're going to try early on against USC.
Yeah. Also, with the thing about Slovis was last season, didn't he throw 9 interceptions during the entire season or something like that? And so he threw a 70% completion average. And so I think that Jaden Daniels last season was thrown into the fire as a first-year starter for ASU. And, by all accounts, he had a very successful season as well. And so I think Jaden Daniels can for sure pass it to Frank Darby and can for sure win it. But yeah.
Yeah, and guys, I think one thing we're kind of overlooking here, a lot of times quarterbacks' play is highly dictated on how their offensive line plays. You look at USC, we've heard in press conferences that with this new offensive line class that Helton said there's possibility that we see some freshmen in there at times. You flip the script over to ASU, they have 2 graduate transfers coming, one from Vanderbilt, one from Stanford on that offensive line. It's a brand new group on both sides of the football. Who is aided more by a stronger offensive line on Saturday's contest?
A stronger offensive line would benefit Keaton Slovis more because he is not as keen on improvising. Jaden Daniels is extraordinarily unpredictable back there. And so even if the offensive line struggles a little bit as it's their first time playing together, he can definitely get out there and make some plays. But I also think Slovis can adjust too, and I think that's going to be on the coaching staff on USC as well to design quick throws for him. That's where he really benefits. That's where he really has success. So the offensive line isn't as much of a factor if he really gets into a rhythm early, getting rid of the ball in a second and a half, 2 seconds.
And Courtney, in terms of the offensive line play for Daniels, with only one returning offensive line, your new left guard, do you think he'll be more prominent to get the ball out early when he feels just a little bit of pressure just because he doesn't have that trust with that front 5?
For sure. I don't think Daniels is nervous at all for the game. And I think that Daniels can for sure knock out some points during, the first quarter of the game. And so I think that Daniels will for sure, pass up some yards but yeah. Gotcha.
All right. As we continue to pivot here on Sports Scene Episode 8, Courtney, I know we talked about it a little earlier. You have some hot takes. What is your bold prediction for Saturday's contest?
Okay, so for my hot take for this episode, so ASU will have a blowout lead in the first half of the game. And I say this because ASU has had an impressive history leads with starts during its few seasons, or during last season and like a couple years ago. But who knows? Like ASU could also start this season with a perfect lead in the Pac-12. And so, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to jump on this one. Well, I think that is absolutely insane to call that. You're talking about a brand new offense that is known for a whole lot of motion, with all three running backs who haven't seen one Division I snap, four new wide receivers besides Frank Darby, and you're telling me they're going to jump on USC, whose defense is all pretty much the same? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. USC jumped on ASU last year with pretty much the same exact team, two less running backs and one less wide receiver. I don't see a way in a feel out game where ASU comes out hitting the ground running. This is a team that is going to need some time. Jaden Daniels, it doesn't get hit in practice. He's going to see a brand new defense for the most part. And USC's got the same offense going against a defense that has struggled in the past and struggled in the first quarter against USC last time to give up 4 touchdowns in the first quarter. I don't see the logic here, Courtney.
Okay, but hold up. From the looks of like their past games, like the Sun Devils, have always had like impressive ball handling skills, and so I think ASU will get the ball first. And like I feel like even if USC might get the ball, I feel like ASU will intercept Keaton's passes. So, but yeah.
Well, I also disagree. I think USC is going to control the first half. I think when you look at how these two teams are equipped, like I said, Jaden Daniels in this ASU offense is all about the hit or miss. You either hit an 80-yard touchdown pass or you're going 3 and out, because that's how they build their offense, right? Keaton Slovis, on the other hand, of the USC offense is built to methodically go down the field, long drives. We talked about the improvement of the running game as well. That also benefits them. They could dominate the time of possession, and they'll dominate it on the scoreboard as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. Again, from what we've talked about, when you start out off a season, it's going to take some time when you have a brand new offense from Boise State, in which guys at Jaden Daniels has said is the most complicated offense he has ever been a part of. And then he's like, oh, yeah, am I 3 running backs? Like, have they played Division I football? No. Oh, yeah, and Frank Darby, have I thrown to anybody else besides him? No. I just don't see how this offense jumped out to a huge opening to start this game with so little experience on the offensive end. Now, I will agree with you. ASU traditionally, Courtney, has been a better second half football team. Last year, they averaged 4.8 points on average in the fourth quarter. That was one of the best in all of college football. So as the game goes on, I could see ASU having a great second half. I could see ASU finishing strong as they feel out that offense. But to start the game strong, that just seems backwards.
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with you a little bit, Carlo. I think ASU's offense will for sure take it down. And I think that, USC's defense might struggle a little bit, in the first half. Because ASU, is a very offensive-driven team. So,
yes, they're offensive driven, but do we have any evidence that this group, we can trust them yet? I don't see that.
The answer is no.
Yeah, exactly. I do believe in the work that USC did in the extended offense to shore up this defense. They know ASU. They played ASU. It's the whole roster again. They know how ASU beats you, and I think they're going to be prepared for it. They're going to force some short drives in terms of time of possession and going down the field. ASU is not going to be able to build up a running game. There's no reason to believe they can build up a running game. And I think USC is going to be very prepared with basically 2 months to work on scripting your first few drives of the season. I think Slovis is really going to put on a show.
Yeah, I think the only way, this is the only way I'm going to agree with you on this one, Corey. The only way ASU comes out to an early lead is if Jaden Daniels rushes for 225 yards and 4 touchdowns. I don't think they're going to do it any other way. It is going to be running the football through Jaden Daniels as he escapes the pocket during broken plays and he finds his way down the field. I'm trying to understand, how can this offense that is so new have so much success on a defense that lost 2 starters?
Anything can happen.
You're not wrong.
I think that, overall, all eyes will be on the matchup between these 2 young quarterbacks and what they can do for their teams. And so, yeah.
We can also bring out the weather in this game. It's not going to be great. It's going to be high 50s. It's going to be raining. And who does that benefit? The home run hitting offense that wants to throw the ball 50 yards down the field, or the short, methodical offense that's going to use a running game, it seems like, is going to use a plethora of wide receivers who are great running after the catch, which the weather isn't going to affect nearly as much, and a quarterback who's more prepared to throw accurate passes consistently and lead long scoring drives.
Yeah, and I think the absence of fans also is something you got to look at. Fortunately for USC, as ugly of a truth this is, home field advantage hasn't been all that great most recently, so they're not missing a whole lot with no fans in terms of crowd noise on third down and stuff like that. But I do think playing at the Coliseum is going to aid them because there is a time difference, guys. Arizona is an hour ahead. I know it's only an hour, and it only started last week, but there is one. So we'll see if that affects this team. But Courtney, even if the game's starting a little later for ASU, that offense is going to start even later. I think in the second half is when they'll get going.
Yeah, I don't think the time difference might make a little difference, but same goes with the weather. But I think the ASU will come out strong in the first half. So.
Well, as we wrap down the show here, let's switch the conversation a little bit. Guys, we have this game on Saturday. USC needs to run the table to get, for the most part, to get into the college football play, or have a chance, really, to get into the college football playoff. X factors on either team, whether we're talking special teams, whether we're talking a specific player, who has to perform besides the obvious names, besides the quarterbacks, in order for their team to succeed on Saturday?
For USC, I'm gonna give you Stephen Carr, the running back. I think developing a running game over the course of the season is going to be such a crucial key for USC to diversify what this offense can do even more. And maybe this game can be a way you can set the tone going down the season and ultimately what you hope could be prepping for a game against Oregon in the championship game. When I look at Arizona State, I would point to anybody in the secondary, really, but my focus would be on safety Ashari Crosswell because he's an experienced guy. I think he's going to be sort of the leader in trying to dissect what USC is going to do on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, well, Stephen Carr, Coach Helton has talked about in press conferences, has been running through people instead of around people this season. So I think Todd Orlando's hit-and-run mentality has rubbed off on the offensive end a little bit. It will be interesting to see. That's one guy I definitely want to look out for. What about you, Courtney? What are the X factors for either team?
I think Brew McCoy. I think he's going to come back, this season. He was out with an illness last season. So I think as a wide receiver's perspective, I think he will come back stronger than ever this season. So my eye is definitely on him.
Yeah, there's USC puts out these little videos from practice, and they decided to put out one of Brew McCoy breaking a defensive end's ankles, and it was a scary video when you talk about an offensive team that is already so talented. I mean, Drake London, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyler Vaughns, Brew McCoy. You got 2 guys who are on the Blinkenkoff watch list already on the same team. That's ridiculous. For me, though, the X factors are going to be on the defensive side of the ball for SC. I think if that secondary plays well, you're talking about Talanoa Hufanga, Isaiah Polomau, Elijah Griffin, Chris Steele. If those guys perform, prevent the deep ball that ASU loves so much, then they're going to be really successful in Saturday's game.
Yeah, no question. The key for USC, if they don't want that hot start from ASU that Courtney mentioned, it's all going to be all about slowing things down in the secondary. So I definitely agree with that.
All right. Well, that does it for episode 8 here on Sports Scene. Thanks so much for joining us. You can follow along our coverage of USC versus ASU this weekend at the Coliseum at Annenberg Media Sports on social media. That's all for us, and we will see you next week